Welcome to Sports Business Management, Chapter 1. This one's going to be a little bit different because we actually do not have any slides or material for it. So what we're going to do, since I will also be doing Kaiser Lives, I'll be able to use a classroom for those which has the camera set up. And so for each one of those, I'm hoping I'll have access to the room each day, and I'll be able to do that for you guys for the days that you're not here. But I'll use the actual whiteboard to teach this class like we normally do. I was hoping in time of this pandemic that they would have uploaded some PowerPoint slides that we could use for online material, but they don't have them. And being that I just got this class sent to me to teach this week, and we start next week, I don't have time to make slides because I've got to have the lectures too. So here's how we're going to do it. So again, you guys need to get the book. Please follow along. And when we're in the class, we'll use the whiteboards and do some graphics and stuff that way. All right. So the chapter 1 is all about leadership and management. Okay, and you got to understand that there are differences between the two. All right. So we'll talk about some of the management theories. So we have what's called the scientific management approach. This theory defines the relationship between incentive and performance and advocates rewarding people based on their output rather than hours worked. Okay, so this is, like if you think about somebody that works off commission, you think of like a waiter or waitress, yeah, they get, their base salary is really not all that great, they're per hours and things like that. But if they do a good job serving the customers, they work off of tips, those type of things that, you're going to get paid for what you get done, right? So the more sales you make or the better job you do, you will make more money, right? It would be like if you worked in a factory and you get paid per however many widgets made, something along those lines. So if you make a lot of widgets, you make a lot of money. Human relations management approach evolved in the late 1920s and early 1930s. And it showed that if employees felt valued, they became more productive. So that when employees felt important, they had higher levels of job satisfaction, which in turn led to higher levels of productivity, so on and so forth. So again, this one isn't a pay to play type of thing. This is, if you make them feel like they're a valuable asset in your organization, they will perform as a valuable asset in your organization. And then the process or administrative approach to management, this one also developed in the 1930s and has been refined up until even 2001. And this approach has a broader perspective on the way managers take action and make decisions. 5 processes revolve around central constructs of taking action and making decisions. Okay, so the decisions made in one of the 5 processes always affects the other 4. So if you make any one of these different, like you look at any one of these different things, it will have a relationship on any one of the other ones. All right. So the different things you have: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, controlling, and evaluating. And all these processes will have interplay within each other. And the one that's typically done first is planning, right? I mean, or it should be done first in a lot of instances. If you don't have any direction of what to do, like, hey, let's just do something. What do we want to do? I don't know. It's sort of, so you have to make plans, right? And again, there's different roles that managers may play in their approach to management as well. So you have interpersonal roles. They're figureheads who act as symbolic and in ceremonial ways. Think about like sort of like the royal family in England. They don't really play huge roles when it comes to governing the country, but they have this figurehead role, like they're leadership, but not really, right? And then sometimes even in businesses, you have that. You have some folks that are like, they're uppity ups, or like maybe they started the business, but they're really old now, and they basically have, everybody else is running it, but they're still there, type of thing. They're just a figurehead. Um, you have leaders who influence and coordinate the work of followers to achieve the goals of the organization. And so again, these are folks that, they'll, anytime you use the word leader, that, that's always, always think leadership rather than management as you move up the realm, like move up the scale. That's always more important. Because you see the organization, you see its goals, and you're making sure that those folks that you're working with are helping to achieve those goals for the organization, right? A liaison develops and cultivates relationships with people and groups outside the organization. Again, this could be in a leadership role, or it could be, like even salesmen and stuff like that. You may go out and like try to sell your, like say I make like fishing rods, right? And, I mass produce them or whatever, I make them, by hand, it doesn't matter. But I'm not going to sell them. Say I don't want to sell them directly from wherever I make them. I want them to be out in the store. So I'm out at like Bass Pro Shop and Cabela's and trying to explain to them why my fishing rods are better than other fishing rods or whatever else, in hopes, I'm building these relationships with outside organizations, hoping that, they'll buy our product and sell our product for us, right? Informational roles. You can monitor who scans the environment for information about trends and events that can affect the organization. So again, keeping up with what's going on in the government, keeping up with what's going on Wall Street, keeping up with what's going on in your particular industry, so on and so forth. So again, right now, the pandemic, I mean, it's starting to loosen up some, so things are opening back up, but definitely, like in the heart of it, you're looking at it from the fitness perspective. You're like, all right, we've got to figure out how to do more online stuff, because if our business is going to stay afloat, man, we got to be coaching people from online, because we can't have them come in the gyms, right? So again, that would be something along those lines. Um, dis, Disseminator, who transmits information to stakeholders in the organization. Um, Again, sometimes these people can be slimy, because they'll kind of oversell, like, oh, no, we're great, look at, which is not what you're supposed to do. You're just like, people got money involved, or they've got, they've got vested interest. You got to let them know what's going on, right? And again, sometimes they'll tell you like, hey, we'd like to, try this and see if this helps. I mean, it's better just to be like upfront. A lot of people like to hide what's going on. Spokesperson, who transmits information to people or groups outside the organization. So again, you can look at it like you have like the White House speaker, who, they have the meetings all day, and the President Trump's White House speaker, the McEnany, will come out, and she'll kind of tell you like all the things going on, something like it's that same type of thing. A lot of organizations have folks that go out and they explain, like pretty much like PR, like, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is what we're about, right? It's kind of the same thing. Decisional roles: entrepreneur who searches for opportunities to improve the organization. Again, not all entrepreneurs have to be entrepreneurs in their own business. Sometimes they can be a valuable asset for a bigger conglomerate business, so to speak, or they have a role, right? They're the ones that are looking, so again, you look at, for example, I'll take, like Reebok. Years ago, Reebok was on the verge of bankruptcy. I mean, they were, in my opinion, they still make garbage products, but anyway, so they're on the verge of bankruptcy. They just, I mean, their basketball shoes were not near what Nike or Adidas were making. Their running shoes have always been just freaking trash. I mean, I'm trashing this company. I'm sorry if anybody from Reebok or anybody likes Reebok's listening to this. I mean, they just really that like they had a height of like, they did the pumps, which were like different and kind of cool and really not necessary, but still, like they're kind of cool. But that was like after that, they really just didn't have anything. I mean, a lot of their shoes were falling subpar in a lot of categories, for sports. I mean, other than if you're buying, like, you just like the look of Reebok for like a casual shoe, nobody's buying them. I mean, a lot of athletes weren't wearing them. I mean, it's just kind of like they got out of it. They were looking bad. And then all of a sudden CrossFit gets really popular, and somehow these two things decided they could help each other out. So CrossFit wanted a national brand to associate with, and Reebok needed something to revive their, like, sports community. So it was a great fit, and it really revived that company. And now, with the popularity that CrossFit had over the years and its affiliation with Reebok, Reebok was able to market CrossFit and vice versa, right? And so I mean, it was really is a benefit for both. um, so whoever was involved in that, definitely had an entrepreneurial, like, hey, like, companies tanking, what can we jump into? What's something new we can do, right? um, Resource allocator, who determines how to best allocate resources to achieve the goals of the organization. So again, if you think of, whether it's, um, I think more like material, like if you make certain things. So again, think you're a shoe company, like where, the rubber you make for the soles, how do you get the best rubber for the cheapest prices and things like that, and you get the right con and so on and so forth. That'd be somebody that, resource allocator. um, you know and again, it doesn't have to be products, it could be services and so on. Like you think about a gym, how do you get, the best instructors, personal trainers? How do you get the best equipment in the gym? How do you, like, uh, how do you, like, get all the different components that make up your gym and make it the best it can be so that people want to come in and work out. All right. And then negotiator, who confers with people or groups outside the organization, obtain concessions or gain agreements. And again, the negotiator is going to try to get the best deal for their company, and they'll usually deal with somebody else that's negotiating on the other side. All right. So those are different management theories. Again, you see some leadership kind of sprinkled in there, but now we're going to get into some leadership theories. All right. So these are mostly historical perspectives on leadership. And the one thing I want to tell you guys about management and leadership is that you will find, like, you have probably worked for some managers or leaders, and you're going to be like, oh, that's definitely them. All right. They're that one thing to a T, which is always bad, to be honest. It's bad if they're one thing. Especially when we get to some of the negative things, like what you shouldn't do as a manager. A lot of you are going to be like, oh yeah, definitely have had that. And you really want to pick up on some of these, and some of these things are going to be, like maybe outside of, like, your control. Like, we'll talk about this first thing called trait leadership here in a second, that basically says you're born with it type of mentality. Like leaders are born, not made type of mentality, or that's the thought. Like some people just come out, some people just come out of the womb and people follow them. That's really that one. You may not be that, but that doesn't mean you can't be a good leader. All right. So again, we'll go through a lot of these. All right. So trait leadership, like I said, is based on the premise that leaders can be identified by physical, intellectual, or personal attributes, and perhaps best summed up by the statement, leaders are born, not made. And again, it's been discredited for a long time, but there are some folks that are sort of that way. They just, I don't want to say that. I think what's discredited in that statement is that the assumption that all leaders are born, not made, but some leaders are born, and again, maybe they got just more natural ability. It's not really influenced by anything else. It's just the way they are. There's just something about them that people follow, right? They have, like your physical appearance, like they just look strong, they're attractive, whatever it is. They're just very intellectual. When they say things, you're like, oh, that sounds amazing, right? Their personality, they're just infectious personality. They're the type of people you just want to be around. And then, and they could have all three of those things, or be really strong in one of them. It's one of those, it's some of those things. Like, you look at some of the really bad leaders of, like our history, and that's some of the things that people say that, some of them would have, like you think about like Hitler, Stalin, Lenin, Mao, like Alexander the Great. Like, you read some of these history books, and you'll find that, like, they had, especially a lot of times it was like some weird personality attribute that people were just like, oh, or they were very intellectual, or, again, you look at, like you see some of the old pictures of some of these guys, like Hitler, like he definitely didn't have the looks, right? And again, he must have had stronger intellectual and personality attributes to convince an entire nation of his crazy plans, right? And there's really bad leaders out there, and you're like, how do people follow them? Like, how do they get sucked up into that? Well, it's because this, they probably have some trait leadership, that's just like something. It's like, and it doesn't make, you're like, it doesn't make sense, but it happens, right? And again, there's some good leaders out there as well that also have those things, right? And so again, it's, some people are just born to be leaders, that it's what they're supposed to do, right? um Behavior leadership theory hypothesizes that if critical behaviors of leaders can be identified, a blueprint for success. So this is basically like, you can make leaders. This is where Tony Robbins and all these other folks that have these seminars that you can go spend thousands of dollars to listen to them tell you how to be the next CEO of a Fortune 500 company and all these other things. That's what they're doing. They're saying, oh, there's a all these folks on the internet telling you, like, oh yeah, you can be a billionaire or whatever. There's a blueprint for success, right? So they look at what leaders have, and then they try to figure out what are these attributes and characteristics, and how do we teach people to adopt those attributes and characteristics. Situational leadership theory observes that a variety of leadership styles could be used simultaneously in response to changing situation. So again, this is like, in certain situations, you may find that being very empathetic works very well. In other situations, basically telling everyone to shut up and follow you might work very well. In another situation, showing your intelligence over your emotion will help. Showing your emotion over your intelligence may, it's situational, right? And identifying the situation and knowing what is going to work best at that time is what a good situational leader will do. All right. So again, there's some things that fall into that some subcategories in situation. So one is that the effectiveness of a leader depends on the leader's personal style and the amount of control the leader has over the situation. Again, that, like if you're soft spoken, sometimes that, like a lot of people are like, you can't be a soft spoken leader. Well, you can. Sometimes you just get your hands dirty, start doing something, and when people see good things happening, they get their hands dirty and follow you, right? Other folks, they're like, hey, look, we're going to come storming in, guns a-blazing, like loudmouth and what, and sometimes that works, right? Any of you that have played sports, you'll realize on one team, you may have several different types of leaders, right? You have the person that's all business all the time, that when everybody's kind of cutting up and the game's getting away from them, and they look in the face and they, put the fear of God into you, like, you better straighten up and get to work. You have those other leaders that, they're just like, they're always just doing, like when you're tired, they're still running. and you're like, man, if they're still doing it, I need to do it. You know, yeah, those other leaders that are just like, man, they lighten the mood, they're funny, they do, you know, like sometimes when like things are too serious, or you know, like you need like a mental break from things going on, they're the folks on the team that just cut up and like just, you know, like, you know, you're just like, you get lost in it sometimes, and sometimes that's good, right? So again, they you can have multiple leaders with multiple things, and they all contribute to the overall goal, right? um, there's a path goal model. This suggests followers are motivated by their estimates of the probability that their behaviors will result in a valued outcome, by the level of personal satisfaction they will experience based on the work. Right. So again, you know, this is one of those things that I feel has been devalued, especially in sports where participation trophies are given out. Because again, if your goal is you want a shiny trophy at the end of the year, and whether or not you work hard, you're just going to get one, you know, what's the valued outcome, right? You know, why work if all you gotta do is show up, right? Where before you had to be either, you know, like when I was a kid, you only got them for first and second, and then all of a sudden, when I was getting older as a kid, they started giving out third place, right? Whatever. I mean, at least they limited it there to for a while, you know. Just, you know, again, that's how the Olympics does it, and that's fine. Um, you know, but again, you had to work for something. So if that's what you wanted, you had to work for it, right? And then again, the situational leadership model is um, kind of a development of, there's a mix of styles that are required to adapt to situations, right? So you have different situations. And then you have a full range of leadership model that encompasses all these things, right? So your path goal, your situational, you know, your contingency, I mean, all those, right? So again, there, one of the things that you got to understand, there's managing and leading. And again, it's, you know, it's best when a manager is a leader. But again, management's a position. You know, so in organizations, they have a management position, and you have people that work under you, so to speak. And you can have some really crappy, you can have some managers that are really crappy leaders. Nobody wants to follow them, but they may follow them because they've got to gain a paycheck, right? Or you stop following them and you go somewhere else to get a paycheck. You know, and so again, great leaders will inspire the folks that work under them, you know, as they are managers, to work hard, work what's best for the company, and cultivate a great culture and product, and, you know, our productivity and everything else, right? So again, great leaders will create group cultures, right? And again, sometimes you can have great leaders in companies with bad culture, and you have no idea that the company really has a toxic culture, because your leader's that good, right? They act as a buffer, as a you know, they block you from the congruent mess that is above them, right? The, you know, that they see it. You know, it's almost like they go to battle for you every day. You have no idea, right? Or they get to the higher parts and they create a great culture all around. And again, there are some companies, you know, anytime get on Google, and you can always Google things like, you know, top companies to work for, you know, based on salaries, things like that. Also look at the ones that are like the top company cultures. You know, like these are companies that their employees love being there, right? And a lot of times you'll find a lot of the ones that are the top money makers, the top ones that people get good salaries and things like that. A lot of times will also, you'll see this, you'll see a bunch of those same ones that are in the top, you know, like these are fun companies, these are great, you know, the culture is great and all that. They're there too, right? And so again, good culture can breed success for a company, right? You know, I can't remember the exact phrase that they use, but Southwest is one of those. You know, Southwest is always one of those consistent companies that people like working for. And one of their things that one of the premises of their country, or country of their company, is that, you know, and I can't remember how they phrase it. It's been a while since I actually looked, you know, when I was in business school, we used to study them quite a bit. But they put their employee first, which is kind of funny, and they phrase it in a way, like take care of the employee. And the reason is that they know if their employees are happy, they'll make the customers happy. So if they have their employees back and they take care of their employees, those employees in turn that have direct interaction with the customer, happy employees will take care of their customers, right? Where sometimes employees feel like the customer, like when you have the customer's always right mentality, and to an extent that's good, but then to an extent, if you have a really horrible customer that, like no matter what is not going to satisfy them, and you allow them to treat your employees like garbage and you don't have their back, those employees start to lose that, like, where they're, they come into work and they're talking to customers, they're like, hey, how's it going, what can I do for you, to what do you want, and that's not what you want, right? So again, great leaders will create a sustainable competitive advantage if you have a great culture. Okay. And that culture, again, keeps and retains good employees, which good employees will keep and retain good customers and also bring in new customers, right? So again, how do you create a good culture? You need to define the values and communicate them, right? So you need to, one, define what are your company's values, make sure you have good values, and then make sure everybody knows what they are in the organization. Champion and reward positive behaviors and discourage and eliminate negative behaviors, right? So, when people are doing good things, man, make it a big deal somehow. Make it, like whether you pay them more, whether, they get employee of the month type thing, like, or some combination of all kinds of things, right? And just don't tolerate negative things. Now again, that doesn't mean people won't make mistakes, but there's just certain things you're like, look, we cannot do this from a cultural standpoint, and you can't let people get away with it. So like sexual harassment, right? If you're a company that allows sexual harassment, it creates a toxicity, and it creates, rumors get spread around like, oh, he hired another cute secretary, I wonder what's going on, those type of things. It creates a bad culture for everybody. The girls in the office are like, well, I'll never move up because I don't look like her. The guys in the office are like, I'll never move up because, one, I'm not a girl, and he's going to give preferential treatment to her, and da 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 da. And it becomes this thing, and again, I'm making a stereotype of guys doing this to women. Yes, women also do this to men, but typically this is what we see. So I'm just going with the most obvious example. And again, it creates a bad culture. So, if you have a manager that's doing those things, you can't tolerate that. And you can't just be like, yeah, but he's really good at what he does. No, it's not worth it, because the culture that you're creating is toxic, and it's going to eventually destroy everything there if a lawsuit doesn't, right? Again, have key people in the organization walk the walk and talk the talk all the time, right? So again, when you have people that are great representations of your company, man, make sure that it's well known, and encourage them to keep doing what they're doing, right? So that they don't, like become a person that used to walk and now all they do is talk, right? And then create cultural heroes. And so again, these are folks, like if any of you that watch the Chick-fil-A commercials as of late, they'll have folks, and I'm just going off the theory that they're actually using real employees, and because I think it says on there these are real employees in their stories, and they'll take somebody that just went the extra mile to help a customer, and they're basically championing them, like, this is what we do. This is what we're about. We're all about customer service and good chicken sandwiches. That's what they're about. And so what do they do in the commercials? These people that go above and beyond. They I think there's one, like this mom comes in, she's got all these kids, and they go to Chick-fil-A quite a bit, and like one of the employees comes over and kind of helps her with the kids, and gets, like helps them with the food, and things like, it's like, I mean, that's not her job description, or his job. I can't remember if it was a guy or a girl that was helping out, or his job description, but they just went above and beyond, and it was very appreciated by this mom that's got like, she had a group of kids, and they go eat like, once a week or whatever, or maybe, like even more than that. And the story, she must have said something to somebody, like one of the managers, like, I can't believe this, your employee does this. It's amazing. It gets all the way to the top. And they're like, hey, let's let people know what kind of great people we have working here, right? Again, great leaders inspire trust. So one, you can't lie to folks, because anytime somebody catches you lying, there goes trust right away. And again, when you have people's back, like, you don't backstab them. That's the thing. If you'll be transparent, you tell the truth, and you don't backstab your employees, and you fight, and again, just because you fight for them doesn't mean you're always going to win, but as long as they know that you're fighting for them, to upper management or whatever else, it creates a trust, and that's always good. And again, a great leader will always communicate the goals of the organization. So if things change, like, hey, we're going from being a a cardio section gym and a weight training section gym, and we're going CrossFit or something along those lines, or we're going to add more like cross training style classes, and we really want to promote that more than this stuff. Don't just like, like one day somebody's like, whatever happened to like we're mostly kind of like your tradition, I know, communicate like, this is where the organization's going, this is what we want to promote, this is what we're going to do, something along those lines. um uh, these are all important, right? And again, great leaders seek great mentors. So if you're a great leader, don't think, like, or if you're doing great in a leadership role, there's always somebody probably smarter than you out there. Now, maybe they're not in your industry. Maybe they're, doesn't mean that what they have to say is not valuable. And again, same thing, like I always tell you guys, I'm constantly reading research. I'm constantly working with other professors in my field and trying to learn as much as I can. I have my PhD. In Kaiser at my position, I'm sort of, like the program director, I'm where I'm supposed to be. But if I get stagnant, I'm not going to be what I should, like, I'm not moving forward, I'm moving backward, and so you constantly have to do those things, and you constantly have to learn from others, right? Um, so here's some characteristics of great managers. Um, Great managers have a nose for talent. And again, it says they have a sixth sense about people in the book. Sometimes they do. Sometimes you learn, you learn through bad hiring what good hiring is, or you just like, you get lucky on a few hires, and you're like, okay, I've hired 20 people in the last year. I've had to fire, or like, out of the 20, I've got like 4 that have been really amazing. Okay, what's amazing about those 4 people? They're great workers, they're sticking it out, they're staying here. What happened, right? Learn from it. Okay. I always tell people, like, don't worry about hiring the person that has the most amazing resume. If they have an amazing resume, by all means, you need to sit down and have an interview with them. But once all the interviews are done, again, this is why it's important, like, always bring in the folks that are qualified, because then you don't have to worry about that problem. Like, well, we had this really great candidate that came in. I loved them. They're amazing, but they're just not qualified for the position. Like, they don't have the certifications or the license, to actually be able to, well, then don't bring them in. Right. But as long as everybody meets the criteria, so, everybody that you look, they're fine on paper. You may have some that look even more amazing on paper. Once they come in, don't worry about the paper. Interview them to see if they're going to fit in the organization and they can do the job. And if you feel like, man, they got great personality, great work ethic, like they're just going to be a great fit with the current workforce here, doesn't mean they're just like everybody else. Again, you don't want to have a, you don't want to have a monolithic type organization where everybody's like, the same robot. But you want somebody that fits well, right? And so if they have all those things, man, it saves you a lot of like training and retraining, loss of time and money and things like that. They bring value to your organization because they help the customers or bring in new customers, or help come up with great ideas for like marketing and, you know, like creating new products, whatever it is, you know, whatever their position is, right? So have a great nose for talent. Assess your talent. Always be assessing your talent. Don't let them get stale, right? And again, assessing doesn't mean like don't micromanage them either, right? So don't go that far. But like always be making sure that like you see them moving forward, because one, if they get stagnant, they get bored. So, you know, for them, it's not good. But for you, you don't want them to start falling into lazy habits, or like trying to, you know, they go from being top performers to like, let's see what we can get away with without getting fired. Okay. And again, you know, bad organizations will let good employees become bad employees, right? And bad managers will either push them in that direction or allow them to go in that direction. You don't want to do that. So again, recognize and reward them. Okay. Um, you know, if somebody's doing something amazing, let them know. Don't settle for weak performance, right? So, you know, again, inspire them to do better, however that is. Conduct formal evals. Again, most organizations do that on a yearly basis, or sometimes biannually, but, you know, you've got to have a formal eval, and always be on the lookout for new people to add to your team, right? Um, you know, sometimes you're like, we don't necessarily need to get somebody else in, but then somebody walks in your door that's just amazing. You're like, don't let them go. Don't let them leave. You're like, you looking for a job? Oh, well, yeah. No, we want you here. I mean, you know, get them, right? Um, Again, and great managers understand that everyone is different, because everyone is different. And it's important to have different people, because different people bring different perspectives. They have different ideas. Sometimes the ideas will clash, sometimes, you know, but sometimes, you know, it's this, you know, I always like the idea of like a piano or a musical instrument. If you don't have every note, you can't make a good song, right? You know, again, no, I know pop music sort of goes against that, because pop music uses the same four chords for every freaking thing. But, you know, like when you really listen to old classic rock or even old classical music, man, there's none of that. Like, I mean, some of the, you know, some songs will use like, I mean, they'll go into different scales and all kinds of things, you know. So, you know, really good, you know, like a good manager is going to have a very eclectic mix of piano keys, so to speak. You know, you got the majors, the minors, the diminished, you know, like, I mean, everything. You got, you know, the sharps, the flats, all that. And as long as that you notice that they can work together, even though they're different, you're going to have a very strong organization, right? And again, with that, a good manager doesn't treat their employee, you know, again, there's got to be certain criteria where everybody's kind of treated the same, but then there's got to be some like wiggle room where you as a manager, yeah, because again, you may have some employees, you got to kind of like get on them like a little kid, like, you know, like, what are you doing? Don't do, you know, like, and that works. And you got some other folks, you got to kind of hold their hand and, you know, like help them that way. You got some folks that they're going to want to cry on your shoulder. You got some folks that you're going to have to, you know, like be tough with, you know, I mean, and you've got to recognize that. And as a manager, you've got to be able to handle them differently. Okay. Um, Great managers will encourage feedback. You know, again, in this day and age, with the younger workforce that's coming in, you know, I'm going to kind of, I'm going to be a little bit mean on this, but just to like get this point across, these are folks that have been coddled by their parents and teachers, because self-esteem has been placed at such a higher importance than generations past. Right. So again, the school systems and everything else and all the parent books that their mama and dada have read is all about self-esteem. And so what is self-esteem? It's encouragement. It's constant, like tell them, you know, like, little Johnny, you did good. You know, even when little Johnny didn't do so good, the fact that he was trying, it's little Johnny, you did good, right? They thrive in that because that's what they grew up with. Now, if you look at my generation, which is Gen X, we were part of that generation that it's like, as long as the teacher ain't like talking to you, you're not in trouble. If you get a gold star in your paper, great, but don't expect it. You know, and it's really that way. And a lot of our bosses that we have still are in that old mentality, like, look, if you don't hear from me, you're doing, you know, like, just assume you're doing a good job, because if you hear from me, that means you screwed up and we got to talk about it, right? So that's kind of some old school management. And again, that's to be honest, every organization I've worked in, that's pretty much what I've had from my management. Again, I'm not saying that's bad, because it's fine for me. But I've worked with some younger folks that want to be acknowledged when they do something. You know, they want, you know, they want a pat on the head every time that they do something good. And they're just used to that, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. But you may lose good employees that need that as part of their, you know, their cultivating in the workplace, right? So give feedback, right? Um, you know, and sometimes they need a little bit of bad feedback, you know, like they need some, you know, like, hey, you're not doing this right. And again, you got to understand how to talk to each person. That goes back to the last part. Great managers understand the importance of systems. You know, again, some, in some instances, you can have some employees in some positions, you're like, look, we don't have a system in place, you're going to create one. Or this is a very creative workspace in what you're about to do, so no parameters, right? Here's the end goal. How do you want to get there, right? And that's fine. Most positions, especially if you think about it, as you go further down, you know, the you know, like in any organization, once you get down to the folks that have like jobs that maybe, you know, like you think like administrative assistant jobs. You think of like in healthcare, you've got like nurses or medical assisting and things like that. These are folks that are not necessarily like, you know, like they make decisions that, like, you know, like they share ideas and make they have to do things, like there's protocols, you know, they're under a license or under like the, you know, like, if this, do this, right? They have to have systems in those particular jobs, right? You know, you think about rehab a lot of times. You know, again, there's systems in place because under a license, if you have this injury, you're supposed to do these type of things. You know, if they don't respond to that, then yes, you can get creative. But again, we have systems in place, right? And so make sure there's good systems in place. Make sure those systems are communicated well. Make sure people get trained on those systems and how to do it. Because again, you know, if you have communication systems, like, okay, somebody comes in, we fill out this report that, you know, this customer needed this to, well, if you don't have a system in place of like, okay, this person takes the order, the person that's going to fill the order, if they don't know where to go to find that, or the person that took the order doesn't know where to put that, that becomes a problem. All right. So again, great managers provide clear expectations. This is what I want from you. This is what I expect from you. You know, and if you clearly define those things, then there's no, you know, when somebody's like, they didn't get something done, there's no argument of, you knew you were supposed to get it done, correct? Yes, I knew I was supposed to get it done. I explained to you how I wanted it done, or I explained to you what I wanted done, you know, here's the end result. You know, then there was a problem. It's not the problem in your communication. There's a problem with that employee of fulfilling their position, right? You don't want to rant and rave like a deranged maniac. And again, that happens when you don't have good expectations or clear expectations. Um, you know, things things a lot of times break down and you have problems because you don't have clear expectations. All right. Here are going to be the top 10 no-nos for managers. And many of you are going to hear this as I have, and you're going to be like, I have either had managers do every single one of these, or I have a manager that is doing every single one of these or some of these, or, you know, you'll see. All right. And again, do not do these. This is the top 10 do not do list. One, hire like-minded people with similar strengths. So again, it's fine if you have some people in there that are similar, you know, like, you know, sometimes in organizations that will happen. It's okay to have some, but when, you know, like if you think about it, like, Like think about our president. The president has a cabinet, right? And they all do these jobs that determine, like what's going on in the country. If you hire if you hire people in every single position that are exactly the same, one person's going to have an idea and everybody else is going to be like, oh yeah, that's great. There's not going to be any discussion. There's not going to be like, well, that's good, but what if we did this, right? And again, if you think of like, management positions, especially like if you think at the top managers when they're trying to like, like develop things of what the company is going to do, or they're, that you have a thriving company and they're like, okay, well, how do we keep relevant? How do we keep moving forward? How do we get, if you have one person comes up with an idea, there's, and it's like, okay, well, we'll just do that. Well, that could be bad, and again, if nobody sees that pitfall, they're like, well, I don't know, if we do that, here's some consequences that could happen. If you don't have some folks that think differently, you don't see you don't see the pothole that might be in front of you, right? And so again, you want to have a good robust group of folks that work, that want, yes, you do want them to be able to work together, so you want some good personality congruency in there, but you want people that think differently, right? Because you want folks to be like, oh, that's cool, but what if we did this? And it's like, oh yeah, or they build on the idea. Sometimes you'll get opposing ideas and then everybody's got to vote like, do you think this is better or this is better? Sometimes, somebody have a great idea and somebody have another idea that makes that idea even greater, right? So again, don't have like-minded people, okay? And again, don't be afraid to hire people smarter than you. A lot of times managers are like, nope, they're too smart, I'm afraid they'll take my job. That's just weakness on your part. you know if that's you, maybe you don't need to be in management position. If somebody walks in your door and they're smarter than you, you hire them, encourage them to keep moving forward. Again, it shows what great manager you actually are, right? Don't be intimidated and don't be threatened by those people. Again, hire the best person for the job, right? Under training, don't hire somebody and then don't give them all the pieces of the puzzle. They're not going to excel at their job if they don't know exactly what their job is. Yes, there are folks, I'll be honest, I'm saying that I've been in those positions where I come into I come to a job, and I'm like, okay, so what is it I have to do? And they're like, well, this is the end result. Well, how do I get there? Well, I don't have time right now. You just figure it out. It's frustrating. I've been there many times and it is frustrating. Now, granted, I have I don't know, I either have a drive or mental capacity or some combination of both. Like I will figure out how to do my job. um, you know, but not everybody's going to do that, and some people will get discouraged if you don't train them on, because again, you have people that feel undervalued. Yes, have I felt undervalued in jobs? Yeah. um, Again, I've, if you look at my resume, I've had some different jobs. I haven't, again, my job I'm in now, I'm almost on 7 years. My job before that was almost 7 years. So yes, I do thrive in, I'm not wishy-washy and just going from place to place to place. But at the same time, maybe I would have stayed at one job if I was trained, like that could have been like I'm just, retrospect or something. Maybe I would have stayed at some place and just moved up the ladder there because I was trained well when I first got there or something. Don't lose somebody because you didn't train them, and then they feel like underappreciated, undervalued, and overwhelmed because they don't know what they're doing, right? They get lost in the shuffle. Don't do that. Don't make quick hiring decisions, even though sometimes you're like, like, man, we need somebody. Don't make a bad hire. If you've got to get by with, you, especially you as a manager, filling somebody else's role for a little bit, like, okay, I'm going to manage and help out at the front desk, whatever the job is, just do it while you're interviewing and make sure you get the right candidate, not the right now candidate. Okay. Not setting good example. If you're a weak manager and you're doing stupid crap, like you're sitting around doing a whole lot of nothing, playing mahjong on your computer. I don't even know how to play mahjong, but um, one of those examples that people, do on their, or you're playing Minesweep or something else, or playing on your phone all the time, but then you expect your employees to be working their butt off. It ain't gonna work. People follow leaders, and whatever follow the leader. You guys have all played that. Whatever the leader's doing, the folks underneath are gonna try to do as well. So if you want them to work hard and try their best, you better work hard and try your best. Okay. Not making timely decisions. Don't put off important decisions. If you got to do something and it's got to be done quickly, and it's, like, again, you don't want to make hasty decisions, but give decisions the attention they deserve and make the decision as quickly as possible that is a good decision, right? Again, there's a lot to unload in what I just said, but yeah, don't put it off. Don't procrastinate important decisions. Manage your time efficiently, because if you don't, you're managing your time inefficiently, that creates problems, right? So again, these are the pitfalls. So I kind of told you what you should do, but yeah, if you manage your time inefficiently, then you run into things like, oh crud, I got to get that done now today. And again, you may not have time to do it right, or you don't get it in time, and it gets you in trouble. That's poor, right? Don't be time poor, be time rich. Like, you get something like schedule, like, I'm going to carve out this much time to work on this. It's not due till this time. And have plenty of time to finish it and revise it if you have to, right? Um, yeah, man, it's crazy. Pareto's law, you guys have heard this one because we talk about the 80-20 rule a lot, but this is one where it's like, um, if you focus on 20% of the tasks that yield 80% of the results, then schedule those tasks at the time you're most productive. Um, you're going to get a lot of work done. So they use that whole, 80-20 principle we use in a lot of different realms, especially in what we do in fitness and everything. That, out of 100 people that have memberships at your gym, only 20% are going to come in and use it. You can be more productive with, this is what this is talking about. What, like, some people are like, 20% of the time I'm more productive than the other 80%. Or if you put the most important things into the 20%, and put the least important in the 80, like, you can focus more of your mental energy on the 20. They use it in all kinds of different scenarios, but seems to be one of those things that holds some water. So I take it for what it is. It's just kind of it's one of those laws that's not like a we call it Pareto's law. It's sort of like Murphy's law and stuff. Like, it's not like a true law. It's not like the laws of thermodynamics, but it seems to hold some truth. Forgetting that members come first. So if we're thinking about gyms or whatever else, or customers, like, yes, like I said, Southwest says employees first, but the reason is because they know if they take care of the employees put the members first, right? And that's important. Like, ultimately you're selling something to somebody, and if you don't make them feel valued, there's no company for anybody else to feel valued, because they won't have a job, right? So don't forget that they come first. Don't micromanage. Good gosh, I've had some micromanagers, and nothing will drive good employees crazy like somebody that won't let them do their job, because they're always like, just on, like, and again, sometimes you'll have bad employees and you've got to, like, kind of be over their shoulder a little bit. And guess what? If you have to do that, or you feel like you have to do that, it might be a good time to get a new employee, right? So again, if you feel like you have to micromanage, that means that you didn't do the thing we talked about earlier with the good hiring practices, right? So again, hire good people, make sure you train them, so don't undertrain them. And once they're trained, let them do their job, okay? Trying to be everyone's friend. You can be friendly, you can be approachable, but if you start to buddy, there becomes some times where there's some difficult decisions that you will not make. You will start to create rumors within the workplace that, so and so and so and so are like buddy. So don't, and I've seen that. at every job I've been at. Let's just put it there. I'm not going to call people, but I've seen that, and it does. It creates toxicity in the workplace. Okay, and not fostering an atmosphere of fun. It's funny. A lot of people feel like if people are having fun on the job, like work is work and fun is fun. No, if you love your job and if it's fun to go, you will do more at that place. And again, that doesn't mean like you have to have like a lot of recreation time. But if you have a fun environment, like the people there are just enjoyable, even though maybe, the work you're doing is like somewhat tedious or whatever it is. If people are coming in and they generally are happy to be at work, sometimes they'll do some of the things that aren't really the most fun, but because the people they're around, it is fun. It's sort of like, like siblings, siblings, I've seen this with kids, like they go clean their room. So you have like two brothers or two sisters that share a room. And because they're sitting there joking and having a great conversation, the time picking up all their stuff goes by, right? And again, that it's not that they wanted to clean up, but they actually had a good time and good conversation. All right. Um, so again, uh, these things are, when you're thinking about these things, you want to avoid those 10 pitfalls, right? And then the last thing we're going to talk about is, this is what they call the ACE model of a successful manager. So again, there's this, like alignment, capability, and engagement. Um, and if your associates are aligned with the values and beliefs and the goals of the organization, so you find employees that believe in the mission of what you're doing, they're properly trained, and they're capable to do their job, and then they're fully engaged in doing their job, you're going to have great performance and you're going to have a great work environment. You're going to get a lot done. Okay. This is chapter 1. These are the main things. Again, you guys are going to have the book for this one. I feel I can, when we do the other, like lectures on Kaiser Live, I'll see if I can use a classroom, and I'll write some of these things up on the board. But if not, you're going to really have to listen to this, because we just, again, you got the visual through the book if you'll get it. And I'm going through these chapters 1 through whatever, and I'm hitting like the major points and kind of telling you guys how to look at this. All right. That's it.